You know, people talk about Sanderson a lot, about how he's a writing machine and how he pumps out so many books, and how, every time there's an author that's older, like George Martin, that has an unfinished series, like, oh, just wait for him to die and Sanderson will finish it, like he did with Robert Jordan and Wheel of Time. And, all of these things are not false, and anybody that knows me or anybody that's listened to some of the Sad Boys book reviews will know that over the last year or so, I have, like, really dove into and become a massive Sanderson fan. Like I said, I just finished Warbreaker this morning, which is a Sanderson book. I love Sanderson. His books are fantastic.
I just need to interrupt, though. If Sanderson were to finish the A Song of Ice and Fire series, that would be just a true disaster.
Yeah. He does
absolute mismatch of tone.
Yeah, he started reading A Game of Thrones and stopped because it just was not what he was into. He's, as far as I've heard, he's friends with George R. R. Martin. They talk, I guess, on occasion. I guess they're friendly with each other. They know each other. I know Brandon Sanderson has said that he got some really great advice from Martin when he was just getting started, and Martin was like really helping him out. He has nothing but nice things to say about him, but he's not much a fan of Ice and Fire because it's not what he's into. And he's also said as well, if people ask him, no, I will not finish Ice and Fire. It's not my forte.
Also, that's extremely disrespectful. I would feel like, that's a really weird question to ask me when the other guy's still alive.
Yeah.
Like even if you did really want that, that would be incredibly gauche to be like, if he croaks, I'll probably take over his life's work and finish it.
Yeah, right. People call him a writing machine, and, he does crank out a lot of books. He has a remarkable bibliography as it stands already, and he's still, if I understand correctly, we're like halfway through the Cosmere, and the first Cosmere book came out 19 years ago, as of the time of this recording, and we're probably about halfway through it. So, dude's got an insane resume, and does have a lot of books out that have come out in very quick amounts of time. But, like, I feel like I imagine this was how people thought back in the day, but I really feel like Stephen King is everything that people say about Sanderson's writing proclivity. Is that the right word to use here?
Are you saying, do you mean prolificness?
Yeah, probably, yeah. Like, how prolific Sanderson is, I feel like Stephen King has always been that, and I mean this with no pun intended, but, like, on cocaine. He had to... The reason why Bachman came about in the first place, based on the excerpt he wrote at the start of the Bachman books, one, because he wanted to see if he could replicate the success that he had at that point in time. He was still very early in his career, going under a pseudonym, seeing if it was one of those things where he could be one of those dime store authors and still have the similar amounts of success that he had with his actual name. And two, because his publishers weren't really wanting to pump out that many. They didn't want to oversaturate the market with Stephen King novels. So,
understandable.
Yeah, going under Richard Bachman, he could release 2 books in a year. But, like, go look at Stephen King's bibliography. I think he has somewhere in the ballpark of, like, 67 novels that have been released. And that's just novels.
It feels like he gets it out, maybe not 2 a year, but, like, 1 every 10 months or something is what it feels like, kind of.
If we're just going purely off of novels, he averages more than 1 per year, going from the publication of Carrie to now with the publication of Holly. Or if you want to count it, You Like It Darker, which is his most recent release, which is another... I don't remember how many there are. There's like 5 or 6 collections of short stories, and this is his most recent release. It came out back in May. It's like 12 more novellas and short stories. I need to pick up a copy, but I just haven't yet.
Those are pretty good. I've read a couple of them, and I don't know, I really quite enjoy them. I think in some ways they're some of his stronger work, but then again, if you consider yourself a King neophyte, then I am like even less than that. So, although I do enjoy all of his work.
I mean, I'm still, like I said, I feel like my King collection and my repertoire of finished King novels is pretty pretty small compared to probably even the average King fan. I mean, I could probably I did a rough count. I rearranged my bookshelf earlier today in between sections of Mr. Mercedes, just kind of doing something to kind of keep myself a little more engaged, but a little more taking a break as well. I rearranged my bookshelf and I finally, quote unquote, built my Stephen King bookshelf, and it's only like 13 books strong. I don't have a huge amount of his novels, period. I have 13 physically, and I have maybe 6 or 7 audiobooks. So it's by no means massive. It's on the smaller side, and there's very little overlap between the audiobooks and the physicals. I think the only overlap is The Stand Complete Unabridged and The Gunslinger, Dark Tower 1. I think those are the only overlaps I have between audiobook and physical. So it's a pretty small collection considering, and I have not read all of them. I've listened to all of my audiobooks, but I haven't read all of my physical books. So point stands is that I'm still pretty much I don't want to say a new King fan because I've been a fan of him for a huge amount of my life, but in terms of like how much I've actually read, I'm still on the lower end. Like I said, he's got somewhere in the ballpark of like 60 something published novels alone.
I think, yeah. There are people that do what we do, but their whole thing is just Stephen King novels and like Stephen King adaptations and all that. So I guess I think to me that's the sort of the final word on his prolificness is like, I mean, there are people that their whole podcasting life's work is recounting his literary life's work. So yeah. I don't know, interesting stuff.
I mean, his work spans multiple generations at this point. He's been keeping all of us entertained for over 50 years. Like, Carrie came out in what? Was it 73? I want to say.
For some reason, I wanted to say 74, but you very well could be correct.
It's either 73 or 74. I know my copy of Carrie. I got a mass market paperback copy that has a little sticker, well, like a little watermark thing on it that says 50th anniversary edition.
Carrie was published on April 5th, 1974.
Okay, so 50 years. Point being, like, dude's been around for 50 years publishing, and he's still doing it, and yeah, that's incredible for so many reasons. And yeah, not every Stephen King book is a masterpiece, but the fact that we can read a book that, for us, it's 10 years old, so it's like, oh man, 10 years, that's a decent amount of time, but it's still a book that released 40 years after his first published novel. So a book that is that old, or that far away from his first novel, and not having the two of us sit here and be like, man, this book's pretty neat, I'm having a great time reading it, is just, I don't know what better praise an author can get than just having that amount of longevity and that quality still, for the most part, stay for half a fucking century. Like, Jesus, it's insane.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell. I'm a massive Stephen King fan. I love him to death. He's awesome.
Shout out Uncle Steve.
When we did I'm going to pull the curtain back a little bit here. When we did The Shining, we had a whole, 15-20 minute discussion, kind of like what we're having right now, about Stephen King before going into The Shining, and I cut all of it out when I was editing, because I was like, oh, this would make a really great video, kind of like the whole Dusty Rants About Yakuza for 12 minutes video that I released last year. And I'm like, oh, it'd be like Dusty and Daniel talk about Stephen King for 20 minutes or something like that. And I did. I edited it. Well, kind of. It was more so I cut it and put it there, and it was ready to render and upload. And then I just kind of sat on it because I just kind of got a little lazy and procrastinated a bit. And then when the new year rolled around, I did a purge of all of the files, so I could save some space on the computer, and I didn't need them anymore. So because of that, I actually lost all of the video and audio files for that conversation. So the editing file was basically useless because it was like, you need to locate the files because we can't find them anymore. It's unfortunate, but we've honestly probably said a lot of what we've said then again here, so it's probably not that big of a deal. But
we might have recreated it, actually.
yeah, but one of the things that I did say then, and I do want to bring up really quickly again, this small tangent has become a little bit of a medium tangent so far, is, and like I said, you did mention this a little bit ago, is I really honestly feel like Stephen King's reputation about his endings is so massively overblown. I feel like people look at the ending of Dark Tower, which I know a little bit about, mostly because of how infamous it is, even though I've only read Gunslinger, and the ending of The Stand, which I will say is not that bad as people. I actually like the ending of The Stand. And it's not even the ending of The Stand, it's the climax of The Stand. It's not the ending. The ending is not what people have a problem with. It is the climax of it that they have a problem with, but they call it the ending because it's the end of the conflict, and then the rest of the book, which is the resolution, is good. I really like it. I really like the end of The Stand. I think the bit after the climax is fantastic. I love the end of that book. Yes, the climax is a little not the most great. It's a little anticlimactic, sure, but like it also just I think it meshes well with the book as it's being told. So I think it's fine personally. It's not the perfect climax, but I think it's more than adequate, and I love the ending after that. I will defend The Stand. I think it's great. But I feel like there's just only a handful of examples that just get massively overblown, and people are like, "Oh, Stephen King can't write an ending; he sucks at endings," because of like 2 or 3 examples. But then you look at things like, I thought The Shining had a great ending. I think 11/22/63 is one of his best endings. I love that book to death. It is one of my favorite books. It's one of my favorite Stephen King books, and it's just so solid from start to finish, and I love the ending. It got me all choked up a little near the end, and I'm like, oh, this book's so good. Great, phenomenal ending. I don't see it personally. The closest I think I could possibly come to is a lot of the Bachman books just end. You think it's building up to something, and then it just ends, and you're like, oh, okay. Like I think one of the better examples of that is The Running Man. It very much is just like it builds up to this big climax, and you think that it's going to have this big release, and I'll go more into it if I ever record a Sad Boys book review on it. But then like it's just like, and then everything goes this way, and then it's over, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's it, I guess, and there we go. But I don't. To wrap this now long tangent up, I think Stephen King's infamous reputation for bad endings is remarkably overblown, and I don't think it's near as bad as people say it is. I think most of his endings are fine. It had a totally fine ending. It's just the end of the sewer section with the kids that is bad, and in one of the worst pieces of literature I've ever read. It's awful. I will not defend that scene. Nobody in their right mind can defend that scene. It's fucking gross and garbage and terrible. Steven, what the fuck were you thinking with that scene? It's horrible. But like, take those like, I don't know, 3 or 4 pages out. Please take them out. They're really bad. And you got a damn near perfect book without those couple of pages. So like, that's like the big problem with it. I think the ending with it is fine. I don't mind the turtle. The turtle is fine. It's not the weirdest thing he's done. It's totally fine. Anyways, Stephen King writes fine endings.
That was quite a salvo there.